Okay, yeah, so today we're going to be working on creating a to-do list app, pretty much the API here, JSONPlaceholders API to-dos. And so this is kind of like what our model is going to look like. So we have a user ID, title, and we did like a boolean. So let's just jump to, just grab this in. And then let's drag this over. Start by creating a project. We're going to go with SwiftUI, so all right, I know. Start that up and start with create. All right, so let's see if we can like, all right, so our preview should load now. We should be able to see our preview. All right. Xcode can be laggy, but start by creating some. We're gonna go with like the MVVM architecture for this. So what we have to do, let's just create. Let's just create like our main screen. We could just call that stay home. Our main folder. Preview file. Oh, good. So create our main folder, and we'll say first thing we need, like we need a view. We'll be using SwiftUI, so we'll go with the SwiftUI view tab. Do and pretty much. And we do already have the content view, but what we're going to do instead is like get rid of this and then put this, use a tab view. And then we will call our to-do list view right here. And since it's a tab bar, we have to give it like a tab item. Something that the user knows that can use. And let's add a v image. Let's use like a system image, I'm thinking. I think there's like one for house. Let's just see. And then let's just add like some text right here for, might be a better image. We can just open SFSim. If there's anything, let's start. Okay, but now let's just go to house. That'll be like our main view, to-do list view. As I say, there's really none. So let's jump back to to-do list. And we'll start by just creating like a basic to-do list app, like just like a basic UI for that. And we might want to navigate to get more details. So let's just drop it in a navigation stack from now. ToDo navigation stack. There's nothing. No. So let's give it a title, like a navigation title, just you're on actually doing to-do list. A little bit. So the main thing is, as I said, we're just gonna be like a list of like all the items that we pretty much have that we have list to-do list. Start it off, we can go by just using like a basic list first. Add like some text just to see how this list will look. I think it's inset group by default, but let's give like a basic one, clean. Pretty much look like this. We already have the scrolling since it's just the list inside the VStack, so it pretty much just stretch. This looks super basic right now. One thing, let's just back to, let's just look how like our JSON, it looks like pretty much ID and another ID, which is another int, a title, a complete. I don't want to go back and forth with this, so I'm just gonna copy this. And matter of fact, I'm just gonna start creating like our service before we do that though, I want to use MVVM with this. So I'll create a quick MVVM file too, a view model file, and we will do this view model. Then we'll just go here and just say class this view model. And I'm cool with this autocomplete. Usually I don't like the new Xcode's autocomplete only because like the AI is just too good. It's filling out the entire model for me. I kind of want to write that like a part of the level coding. All right, so now we have like a basic view model that we're gonna kind of use inside our view, and we want to introduce this. So I'm gonna go with, we could just do a state object for view model. Then we'll just add the type here. View model. Not really using this now, but it's gonna function. Requires a to-do list model conform to observable object. Yeah. So we just have to jump back to this view model and have it conform to this observable object. I know there is the new observable macro tool. I'll probably use that in a different stream, but for today I'm just gonna go with like observable objects, state objects are observed objects. So if we go back to review, this error should go. Okay, but we just have to update our preview since it has like a requirement for using that view model. And go with like the basic right here. All right, so we have like this basic UI here right now. What we're gonna do, let's just see if we can run it. It should just show like a basic. Yeah, we have to update our content calling inside our content view. So let's just go and initialize that with a basic class. I mean, initialize that with our to-do list view class. And then let's just run again. Okay. Over to run. You know, this can be. Okay, finally. All right, so we actually still have the view, have it working with the. So let's see if we can like get like some build out a little bit more of like the actual view that we want. So if we jump back, because if we go to our simulator, if we jump to our simulator here, like I want to show more than just the title. Look back at the JSON, there is an ID. I'm not sure, we might not need to do that, but we have a title and we have at least a value, a boolean. So I'm thinking for the completed value, we could just do like a dot or like a check mark if it's highlighted or not. So let's just jump back. So we just want to add like a circle or some type of button here just to identify if the task is completed or not, and then so that we can toggle it if needed and just like show some type of visual UI. So we'll jump back to the to-do list view. In here, we're just using like a text. What I want to do is rerun our preview. And we will, instead of doing it like that, what we're going to do is like hstack text. Then we'll say clean room. And then let's just add a spacer here. Then we have like, let's use a toggle type of image. Go with that image for now. And like we'll switch to using a toggle, because I think if we use a toggle, we might not even need to put here. Just be within it. Let's go with the image first. And then like we'll pretty much handle the image based on. But let's just jump to SF symbol, see what use. Kind of just need like a circle, one that's filled and one where it's bunch of images. All right, let me see what we have for circle. Like circle fill or circle. Or circle.fill. This is good for now. And then if the task is completed, we will switch to circle.fill. Okay, so our preview already loaded, so we have some type of UI here. The thing though, I want this to be tappable. I could just add like a pretty much just an untap gesture, but like I feel like the UI I want it to actually have that button feature. So I'm gonna wrap this inside a button first instead. We might have a button that actually just takes a system. Okay. So name the string. That. We should still see the same experience, except with the task that I get. We'll do. Okay, so it looks like all of them really have this title key. Just have it empty. Get rid of this one. And it will look like this. But I actually don't like just leaving this empty, so I'm gonna go with the other button instead. And just do an action with a label. And jump back to using our image using a system name. And we'll get rid of this. That should work. A bit smaller, but we can adjust that. I want to kind of control the color for this. I'll say style, and I'll make it just plain. Okay, so you see, it kind of changes to like that darkish color, but the button. All right, so we kind of have our basic idea of what we want our row to look like. We could cut this. So we kind of build out the UI. The next thing is gonna do, we have to actually get the data from the API. But since we actually have how we want our view to look, what I'm gonna do is cut this and add this inside a different view. And then the next steps we'll work on actually hitting the API, getting the data, decoding it, and showing it inside the list. Cut that. I'll create like a new folder. I don't know why new groups show up here anymore. I'm just seeing folder. I'm using the new Xcode. Yeah. I'll call this row. Row. And then I'll add a new file in here, SwiftUI file. To row view. And I'm just gonna paste the same code that we had earlier from pretty much our to-do list view right here. So I'll just undo this so you can see it. I'm just gonna paste that back. And then here, I'm going to move to, I'm just gonna call it. It's the same code, it's just that like I'm using like a reusable view. So it's the same experience we're having here. So it's just showing one of them. If I added more, it would just be inside a different, like a different element in the list. But as I said, what we want to do is get the data from the API and actually like show that type data. So I guess one of the first things we need to do is like, let's start by creating like a model to actually match match the data that we're gonna show. Let's just jump back to the JSON placeholder API. And we'll just scroll here. Look for. Alright, so let's just copy this. So that like as we create the model, like we don't have to go back and forth. I'll jump here and I'll create another folder. And I'll call this just like our models folder. Models. And we'll create our first new file. Okay. And then for this model, we'll just start by creating like a struct. And just call it ToDo item. And let's just paste that JSON response that we saw. I'm gonna maximize. So now that we can see this, let's just comment this out. I don't want this to keep occurring. One thing to note that like if you're like say if I copied this and I had the AI on, what would happen is that like and I started say if I copied and pasted this right here and I had the AI on and then I started writing a script call this, it would actually auto all the properties. But I don't want to rely on the AI that much. So I kind of turned that off and I love the idea like really writing the code and like having fun with it. So I'll start off with creating this model to pretty much match our response. So we'll start by doing like let username, user ID, and it's an int. We'll let ID too. That's also an int. We'll have let title, which is a string. And then we have completed, and then this is a boolean. Cool, same thing. Whatever. We don't have to worry about any of these being optionals, because like pretty much this API guarantees that you will have the values needed. If you're there like maybe like a real API production, and you might have a case or a property might be optional, you might need to consider that. All right, so I can kind of get rid of this now. Don't really need this. Okay. Then we will jump back to. We have the model to represent, and we have our along with our view model. And what we want to do is create like a service separate class, and then add that as like a dependency for view model. So let's jump to here instead. So create another folder. Call this just services. Services. And within here, we'll do like start by creating like a new Swift file. Call this services too. Or we could just say API service. Services. And then I like to use like a protocol just for like map the blueprint, and then like what happens now, it helps with like abstraction with writing like unit tests. I'll start with like a protocol, and let's just call this API services, and then it's just going to take some it's going to have a function. This function, as we know, is just to get the to-do list items. And we want to use Swift concurrency with this, so we're going to use we're going to use async because we're going to handle it asynchronously. I don't want to handle like in case any errors with like throwing. So I'm going to create like a custom error. Let's just the throws there, and we know what we want it to return. We want it to return like versions of our model decoded. So the name of that is to-do item. Cool. So now we have like the basic idea of what we want the function to be pretty much set up as. So we want to create now a class to actually conform to like our API service. So I like to do this. So I'll be like API services impl, and then I have it actually conform to this. And then what will happen now is that like when we eventually write tests, we can pretty much create like a mock version API service and then like pass it inside our view. That way we're not making real calls, like real API calls. Like the next thing is we're gonna like just have this form to it and add that protocol. It's gonna flag me because it's expecting to return something and I'm not returning it. So for the time being, just to close that up, I'll just fine now. Okay. All right. So now the next thing we know is the API endpoint. But we yeah, so we can jump to back to our browser just so we can get the API. And that's pretty much this URL here. Back to usually if I have multiple API endpoints, I usually try to use like a enum or so forth, but I'm using just one for this. So I'm just gonna go with creating like a private variable, private let, call that endpoint. Then we'll start off like we're gonna use, as I said, we're using Swift concurrency. We're gonna use like URL session.data task, but the async version. But the first thing we want to do is convert the string to a URL. So we will say let's do guard URL string. Then we'll say endpoint, and then if it fails, we want to. So usually we'll end up just doing like a return, but we don't want to do that. I want to throw an error. If we're unable to convert the string to a URL. I mean, we know it will because we know this URL works, but when we're writing code, you just gotta think of different edge cases, and just to be safe. So I don't want to just throw. I could do. I think this had no. So I want to throw like custom errors. So what I'm gonna do is create like a custom error here. I'll just sorry, go enum API error. Not the best name, but it will work. And then I will create our first case, and this will be a invalid URL. And let's just add one more, and this will be like one that we can use for a bunch of different cases, like just some custom. So we'll touch on this a little bit. I'll just comment it out for now until we start using that. But yeah, so back to this. So when we try to guard, unwrap, or convert this string to URL, transform to a URL fails, we're gonna throw a API error. There's gonna be an invalid URL. Okay. Oh yeah, I forgot to make it that whenever you're trying to make like a custom error, you have to make it that it confirms the error or localized error. All right, so we have this now. Now we want to actually like use this URL, actually try and get some data. So we're gonna have to do something like let response like URL session that shared the data from URL. So this one, see the different asyncs, but we're gonna use this one. We have a URL, so we'll just pass it in there. And it should flag me saying that yeah, it needs a try and I think access for a wait. Since we're gonna need a try for this, I figured let's just put all this inside like a do catch. Put this. And then we will go paste this back. We still have to add try wait. Yeah. So we still have to add try away. We added that. So right now what we have now, we just use the URL to get the same data that we saw on the screen here. So we have all of this. We hit this URL and we got this as data from the API. What we want to do now is we want to convert it to a model or decode it to a model that matches our do item. But before we do that, I want to check that the response, your response is the right type, like the status code, whether it's between like a 200 or so. So for this, I'll say set the URL first. So I'll say like guardlet response. Oh no, HTTP URL response, and we'll respond as HTTP else do this. All right, so basically what we're trying to do, we got the response and we're converting it to this other type, HTTP URL response. And that's because I want to be able to get property from this called status code. Right. We could pretty much map these like and add them together, but let's just add, for the fun of it, let's just add something else. Just call this response conversion error. Not the best one. But and then like we could just throw this. Dot. All right, so if we're unable to convert that to a HTTP URL response, we'll flag it and then throw this error. Now if the next thing we want to check is that one thing, you know what I'm gonna do instead? I'll do this. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna check. I'll do it in a different line just so it's for readability. So the next thing I want to check is the status code. We could do something like dot contains HTTP response status code. So we're checking if the status code between these two values between 200 and 299. We could pretty much do this. So we're basically checking this. If this, then do this. Yeah. Don't really like how this one's looking. So what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to add it to this guard statement. We're going to do an additional check. Come on. Then let's just copy this literally. Okay, not there. Now we're checked, so now we can get rid of this. And let's just change this to status code error, invalid status code. And copy this. So the first thing we check is if we can convert it to a HTTP URL response, and then we check if the status code is between 200 and 299. If that is fine, then now we can start decoding our data. So we'll go with saying something like this. We'll say JSON decoder decode. Type will be our an array of to-do items. Gotta add the cell. Then we'll just pass in our data. Then our to-do items. Let me put that equal so y'all not confused. To-do items. This should be asking us for like a try or something. So one thing that's asking us for right now is that it can't decode it because our to-do item doesn't conform to Codable. All right, so let's just jump. To fix that, we can just jump back to models. And then here, we actually might need to add another property protocol here, but I'll wait till like a little bit later. And I'll give you a hint, it starts with an I. That's the name of the protocol that we might need to add here. So we'll like decodable. And then if we jump back to our service class, this error should go away, but it might ask us to add a try. And we don't need to do a wait since this isn't an asynchronous operation. So basically we check the errors, we check there's the status code, and then we decoded the data that we got from the API and now return it. And that's just in the success case though. We are gonna handle our error case, which is this catch block here. But for now, I want to check to see if we are at least getting the data. Is it decoding properly? So we're gonna introduce this semi-complete API to or the semi-complete API dependency to our view model. Come back to home to do this view model. It's basically empty. And we're gonna add one property. We're gonna add a services property. Make it conform. So I'm using the protocol here. Notice that I'm not using like API services input. I'm using the protocol. And that's to help with when we start writing unit tests. Because we want to be able to write unit tests that we can test them easily. We can just pass in like mock versions of different service class and use them. All right, so now that we have this, we'll just add our initializer. This is one of the autocompletes I really like. Say if you create a class and like you have some properties that haven't been initialized, you can just start typing it in it and it will autofill. Love that. All right, so I don't want to do this every time where it's like every time I'm about to initialize to do this view model, I have to it requires API services, a class that conform to API services. I'm gonna give it a default value. Just make that API services input. This is gonna probably flag us with an error since our preview is expecting it to, since it uses our view. So let's just pass that in. Well, actually, we don't need to do this because we made it a default, so it should be handled. The next thing we're going to do instead of services is to actually use these services. And well, first we want to check to see if like the data we're actually getting the data and decode. So let's just add like a quick function inside here. Call this fetch to do item. This also has to be asynchronous since we're going to be calling our asynchronous functioning. It'll be like services, fetch to do item. Supposed to be returning our to do items, but I don't have a property for that, so I'm going to change that right now. I'm going to add bar to items and it's to one thing we have to change though is so that whenever this does get updated, whenever we do get that data from the API, we wanted the view to update and show it. So I have to make this a publish property. I'll add this in front of it. So now whenever this to-do items gets updated, the SwiftUI view using it will re-render. So let's just uncomment this and use this. Equal, and we'll just say so. Let's just say to-do items. And we might need, yeah, we have to wrap this in a to-do block and we have to mark it with a catch. So like that. Add the to-do block. Paste. And let's add a try. Same thing, let's add a catch block. As I said, we're not really implementing the error cases right now. Just want to check to see if we're actually getting the data. so we'll do print to do items, and let's set a breakpoint here so that like when it runs, we can actually try await. I always forget one of these. If it's not await, then it's try. If it's not try, then it's await. That error should go away now. And now we want to call this whenever the view appears. So we'll jump back to our to-do list. And then we'll add like a task modifier. And this we'll do like view model. And we're going to call the same function that we pretty much just added. And we have to add await here. The task is just going to call this whatever operation or whatever task we add in here, or whatever process you want to execute whenever the screen appears. It really similar to dot on up here, but when handling like APIs or anything like that, I definitely recommend using tasks, because one, like say if you have a long operation going and then like you leave that screen, the operation will cancel. Like that task will cancel, so it saves you a wasteful like network call or something. That's one big bonus. And I think like if you're on like if you navigate to like a detail view and come back, it doesn't recall, but I have to recheck. All right, so yeah, so we got this. So let's just run our code right here, and then we'll have like we'll be able to print our item. Okay, so we did get the item, but we get an error here saying that we're making these we're updating the view, but we're not updating it. Right, we're gonna fix that in the next round. But let's just see if we actually did get these items. Get rid of this. And I'll move the breakpoint. And yep, we got the data. Quick hint though, like I was using print now, that's why it looks like this. But look, if I use dump, dump is pretty much the same. And but it just like puts the data in a better format when you're trying to log it to the console, I guess. Ignore that one again. We're gonna fix it right after this. But but as you see now, the data is like way more easier to read, better formatted. 200 elements, that's a lot. And like, well, you get that data too. You get that extra information. You know how much elements are in the array or so. All right, so get rid of this. We know we're getting the data. We know we're decoding it properly. Now, this error it mentions publishing changes from background thread is not allowed. Store to publish values from the main on model updates. So fix this. A quick way to fix this is basically saying we gotta just update this on the main thread. Quick way to fix this is like we can add the main actor, and pretty much whenever you add this, it makes that whatever function or class that has this decorator pretty much will run on the main thread, run its operations on the main thread. Some people put it up here, but I rather to put it like on the exact function I might need it. So if we run this again, you notice we don't see. Jump back to Xcode, but as you see, no error here. Okay, so we have the to-do items, and we now the next thing what we want to do is pretty much show this in our view. We want to replace static view that we have here. So for load this static view that we have here, and replace it with the actual elements from the API. So we're going to use our, when we jump back to our to-do list view model, and we're going to use our to-do items. Just got the data from the API. And then we'll just be like, adjust our list. So we'll have it take some value. So view model, to-do items. And then like to-do item in this, and this might give it. Okay, so it's saying that to-do item, it requires a to-do item conform to identifiable. So that was the hint I was giving you earlier that we might need to add another protocol, and this one starts with I. The SwiftUI view requires this when you're like using this for show like some model data inside lists, but it's a quick fix. We can just jump back to models and add a parameter, add a protocol called identifiable. The only requirement for this is that like you literally just have a property called ID, but the API requires this, so we good. We don't really need to add that right now. All right, so now if we jump back to review, this error will go away, and I can recognize it, but we're just gonna see a bunch of the same things here, and that's because, well, yeah, we didn't update our row view to really use the new data from item. So let's just do that right now. So we'll jump to row view, and then we'll add it that it requires a to-do item. And then we'll replace like the static data here with actually to-do item. I'll use title. And then, all right, let's just look how this looks. And like we made other changes. We have to update the, so the name, let's just add some basic stuff in here. And then I just made that this is false. We just have to update. All right, so we have this now. Try and run it again. What else? Where is it? Oh yeah. So we're gonna pass in the row view that we have here now requires a to-do item. We're gonna pass in the, each one from the to-do items that we got from the API. So let's run this again. Enter. And as you can see, this pretty much matches. So it's selective, auth, same thing there. All right, same thing here. All right. So the next thing we want to check though is, as you see for the fourth one, 1, 2, 4 at Poro, this should be a checked button. So we're gonna change that and update it. That like if the value is true, we can show that it's completed. If not, then we show it like empty. So let's jump back to our code. I will go to what that was. I'll go to to-do item, to-do row view. And right here is the problem. So we're just doing like a circle, but we want to do to-do item. We want to check if it's completed, then we do circle. If it's completed, we do circle dot fill, and then if not, then we do circle dot just circle. So we're gonna replace. Just gonna do like to-do item here, and then we're gonna check completed. And then if it is complete, we're gonna do this. If it's completed, we're gonna circle dot fill. And then if we run it now, we'll notice. Yeah, so you notice that some of them are actually toggled right now. Right here. And let's just check. So at Poro, that's true. Again. So we have it actually changing, but we're not able to toggle it, and we want to be able to toggle it manually. One thing I'm thinking too is I want to make the text capitalized. We could do that, but let's see if we need have this. So this is the action where we put if the user presses the button, I want to toggle it. So one thing we can do is we can add like a closure. That way we can pass back what pretty much what row was selected, and then we can have the view model kind of date it based on the index, like toggling whether it's completed or not completed. So we'll say for to this word, and we'll have it Let's just do like button tapped. Then we'll back to our to-do act. It's gonna require us. Then I'll be complaining requiring us that we add this function. I'll add this parameter. And we don't have to do it like this. Since it's the last, it's trailing parameter, we can just do this instead. And what we're gonna do, I was thinking like pass back the selected to item. I was thinking about that, but we could, since we know what it is, here we could pretty much do that too. But I'm gonna pass it back. So we're gonna come back to the row, and I'll grab this here, put this in here, and literally it's just gonna be. So it's kind of unnecessary in a way, but just for clarity, just to see so we can follow the code. I guess it's like a good idea. So instead of doing to do item again, I'm just going to do item so we can tell them apart. Our item. So now this is the item, the row to do item that was actually selected by the user. What we want to do is toggle it. Yeah, I probably could have tried to do something like to do item that completed or do item that completed that toggle. I think because this is a struct, it's not even gonna allow me to do that. Yeah. Since it's a struct, you can't be mutating the properties. So we're not gonna do it that way. We're gonna actually pass it back to the view model and update it based on the index. In our list, in our array. So come back to this view, and we know that whenever we can get the selected item, and we want to take that item and find the index for it, and then based on the index, toggle the completed property. So add one more new function to our view model. So I will say item to do item toggle item. It's a long one. I'll leave it there. All right, let's just do update to do item. Then we'll add an item. Good. Then property parameter. Then what we're gonna do here. So this is the same to do item that we get that when we select it. So let's just add it in here. And then we'll add the logic back inside of view model so we can handle it. Pass in selected to the item that we got back from the user after we selected it. And we're gonna actually do the work. So the first thing, as I said, is we want to get the index so we can know which item from the array was actually selected. One sec, chat. All right, cool. Yeah, so we want to know which item was actually selected so we can get the index. So first thing we're going to do is do something like to do items that first index is first index. And we're going to do it that way. Just do this instead and say I want to get the first item where the ID is equal to selected to do item ID and optional x equal. Yeah, so just again, so we know which item was selected. We have our So we have that item, that's a selected to do item. And now in our to do items, this is our list array of items. We're trying to find what's the index for that selected item. When we do find that index, we want to toggle the completed value. So it would be like two items, index, completed, and let's do toggle. Okay, so now whenever we select item, we should be able to see toggle. And since two items is a published variable, your view should re-render and show it. Let's just run it and just test. This is one thing about the previews, it's annoying having to outwish. I just close this. I don't know why the AI doesn't just handle this portion for us too. I don't really care. The trailing closure here, we're not really using the value in the preview. So we'll just do underscore since we care what the value is, and we're just gonna do it in. And now let's do another run. Oh, okay. So let's just test if we can actually toggle the item. So we see that we can toggle it here. Toggle it off. Yeah. Okay. All right. That looks good. I wonder if we add with animation, if that will or like improve appearance. Let's just try that. It works, but I just kind of see what will if the UI, the UX will change. Oh, you see, it kind of toggles slower. It's like a better appearance, right? Kind of like that. So I'll keep that instead. I'll keep the width animation here. Oh yeah. So again, we're not really handling errors. We can toggle. So let's just take a pause, just to like get an idea of where we are right now. So we can get a list of to do items from the API and show them on the screen, display them in a list. And we can toggle the status of them, whether they're complete or not. Okay. The only couple things left is I want to change this image. I want to change it. Actually, let's just change that quick right now. I think I'm just going with like a newspaper or like a pen. Let's go with a pen. Back to our content so we can update our tab item. Rerun. Yeah, I kind of prefer this more. I'll stick with. And the next thing I said we want to do is handle in case we have errors. We're not really handling for errors here. We're just pretty much just printing it. But before we start handling from the view model level, we have to start updating from API services. So let's just jump back a bit. And we're gonna handle in here if we have any errors. One thing we can do that's so fast that we can do is we could add so whenever we have an error, Xcode naturally is gonna give us like a localized description of what that problem might be. So what we could do is just take that localized description and then show it to the user. That's one way how we could do it. We can still add on like our custom description, which we will in a couple, but also use Apple's description because sometimes it has some real detailed info, like whether the Wi-Fi might be off for the user or some restriction they might have on their device. So I'll start by removing this extra case that we had here, where it's a custom and it takes a string. Really, that string is going to be our error.localized description. So what I'm going to do now is just throw. I can get rid of all of this. I'm going to do throw API error. error dot custom, and I'm gonna say error dot localize description. So now, whenever if say the try fails, the decoding fails, it will throw out this error here. Or if some other case happens, or where there's an error, it will just handle passing in custom case for it using their error description. Before we jump though, let's just add like a custom variable to our enum that kind of gives like a more readable description. So we'll be like var error message, and then we'll be like switch self, and for each case we're gonna pretty much return what do we want this error to be that we can show to the user. So we'll just be like for now this will like invalid URL, and we could be like return invalid status code. And then for this case, this is where we're actually going to use the error localized error description that we get. It'll be like something went wrong. Then I will use whatever Apple is saying is error. Error message. And whenever we each error case now, if we call error message API error dot error message, we will be able to get the matching string that matches the error message. Might sound a little bit confusing now, but when we start using it, it's gonna make more. All right, so from this point, our service class is pretty done. We do this view, and now we know we're actually getting some errors here. If we can show this error in the view, it does occur. So the first thing is I like to use like an alert to kind of show errors. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. But we need like a binding that kind of tells us when, tell the SwiftUI view when to show this error. So I'll start by creating a add published again. I'll call this show error alert. There's actually a different way how we could do this. We could actually have like an error type inside our view, and then based on when that's not nil, we can have SwiftUI view actually show it when it's not nil, and show the error alert. But for this one, we're just going to do it simply using a boolean. So boolean, we'll set this to false. We'll also add another property called error message. So this is what we're going to use this to show our text string. Error message string. Okay. So whenever we hit the catch block, we know we pretty much just got an error. So I think we're gonna do something like this. I was gonna do an if let, but I think some and say I know there's a way you can do it where it's like you pretty much handle it, but let's just go with the classic and just do if let custom error. So pretty much we have to the catch block does return an error, but it's inside, it's an error type, not our custom type. Can't cast it to our type. And then if it's successful, then pretty much we're gonna update our error message. Message to equal. Remember, our error message from our equal our error message from our custom error. So this error message name, yeah, it's this same value here. So whatever error case, if it's an invalid URL, you about to see like an invalid URL text. Right, so some error message. And then in the case where it doesn't match with any say if it's a decoding error, pretty much just do so like error.localize description. Clean this up a little bit more. I'm making much. Then once we have gotten like some type of error message updated inside that string, then we can do like show error alert toggle. This is what will actually make the alert show on the screen. Especially since it's published now, so any changes that do occur to this property will update in the view. Jump back to our to-do list view. And we need to add the ability for it to have alerts. So we'll do that by adding like an alert modifier. Let's just go with a simple one. Let's just go with is present. Looks like they're about to deprecate it, even though like this is like the sleekest easy to use. But the other one, like I was mentioning, is this error case here. Where basically you can add like a local localized error type. Oh, you can actually map it to. Could try that next time. So we can add like so we could use our show alert, show alert property here, and then we could have like a localized error type in our view model, mapping it. So, but we're gonna go with like even older version, a deprecates version. This one right here that just takes that is presented, and then we just add in alert type that we presented view model show error alert in it, and we're going to use that same view model error message that we had that we updated here. Properties so that we can show it in. Okay, so let's test to see if this is actually working. So we're gonna like kind of force the API to fail. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna remove some I remove the S from API so that it fails. I should, as soon as we land on the home screen, we should pretty much see error like this. Something went wrong. Operation could. Okay. But we'll go back. If we add back the S here, so we know that, all right, so one, we are seeing our error alert. So if we add it back though, it should right now. Okay, so we can see the data. Nice. All right. So one other thing that we can add to is a progress view. Let's say, all right, so one thing we can add to is a progress view. And what we want to do is show this progress view as we're getting the file while we're waiting on the API to return back with some. So another super easy way to do this is by adding another published variable. And let's just call this one is loading. And then we're going to make that is loading change as soon as we're about to make, well, as soon as we about to make an API, before we make the API call, right before we make the API call, we're going to make that change to true. And then after we finish with the API call, obviously we want it to change to false. That way the spinner disappears. That way this false. And then also want it to disappear if we hit the error. So here, and it's just false, and then add that back here. But this alone won't do anything. What we have to do is actually just add like Yeah, what we have to do is actually add like some logic inside the view to actually listen to our is loading property. So we can do that now is by adding an overlay. So on our V stack, we can add another modifier. Add it, and let's just add it at the bottom. So we'll do like overlay content. And it could be like if view model is loading, and we can just call it progress view, adding in type of key that we wanted to do. So we can be fetching our loading. Do this. Type of emoji like this. All right, so now as soon as we start fetching the data, like a progress view, so it's really fast right there. So let me down a bit. I think you can do something like this patch. You just add like a delay. Yes. And but just remove. Okay, so what I want to do is have this wait like 3 seconds, and then it's gonna disappear. We have to use some, and we don't cause any. Like rough week self, and I like let's run it again. All right, so you see it here, and it's waiting 4 seconds inside a bit. Pretty much, don't really need that delay anymore. We know it's gonna work if like the API does end up like the user has bad connection. API does end up taking a bit while to load. They'll still see that spinner. Okay. Run it again just to make sure we got really didn't. I know, but run it again. Okay. Yeah. So we go here. So and so we are handling our errors. We're able to toggle the value if big plus. I think that would be good too, and I guess we could add this in if we could delete an item. Yeah, good. Have just 50. This might be too. So one way how Xcode makes this make this pretty easy to do, like adding a delete item, like the swipe, and then swipe the row in the item, and then you can get that button on the side. Is that we add, I think, swipe action to our row view. So this view here, so we go back to our list, and then we add like a swipe action or to do. So we'll do something like swipe actions. I think the default is definitely it's sets to the right, but we just have to add what we want this button to. I just say delete, and then we have our action here. Before we even add in the action, let's just see what this. Run it again. Okay, so we kind of get this, and I think the reason why it's showing it gray, we don't really want it gray. We want it red. Look how we have to specify the role. So if we do role and we do destructive, then run it again. The red version of the button instead of the gray version. So it automatically does this. Swift automatically really, because I don't have any logic in handle this, but Swift is automatically handling like it's removed array. One of the beauties of SwiftUI. So really, I don't need to add logic for this, but I don't like the fact that it's just. So what we want to do instead. Oh, one thing on the add this part. I think it's based on the role. So if we added a cancel. Oh yeah, if we added a we dragged it, even though we don't have any functionality in here, I think. But as long as you already have destructive, that was kind of new. I didn't know that. So yeah, as long as you have the role that's destructive, or using a swipe action, it automatically just remove. Let's run it. So we fetch the data each. Obviously, like each time we run it, it will. So this is neat, but I kind of don't like that we don't have anything inside our closure and it's actually doing this. So let's just add the logic that we want it to case. Again, the next thing is that we need again the index. It comes down to just using index again. So let's jump back to. We're gonna add another function. It's gonna be func delete do item. These functions are really similar, so I really could just yeah, I really could just use one function and then like I guess pass like something or deleting or updating, but I'll keep them because literally all we're gonna do is copy the same logic. We want to be able to find what is in for that value. And instead of toggling, I want to remove. So to do items, I remove at this. I'm going to set a breakpoint here just to make sure that our function is being called and it's not just relying on the destructive role. Delete, and just do to do item. I want to make sure our function calls. So let's run this. Okay, so our function call. Breakpoint. Breakpoint that we can just see how the flow is. Yeah, doing it. Still pretty much doing the same thing. Swift just provides a out of the box version to do it, which is nice. Just by setting the role to the role of a button to destructive, you get that feature automatically. So we're able to delete items. We can fetch items from the API. We can delete them. Like another big that's up. And we can show alerts. We can show progress view as we do. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do now, run this one. Do this. And we can check, we can unsave, we can mark as completed, not complete. All right, that looks good. All right, so what we're gonna do now is let's make it. Let's see if we can add like some type of caching faults, and if it exists, then but we can handle like some caching. I wonder if we might push that. The stream's getting pretty long. Yeah, it's getting pretty long, so we might push that to the next stream. But like basically, what we want to do is handle caching. We want to make it that the user can search like based on whatever the to-do item is, any type of search term, and like we filter the list based on that. Filter the list, search term, and we want to add some unit tests. Okay. Could start it. It's been a while since we did any type of unit test, so let's see if we can just bang out like one unit test, at least just for the. Let's see how we could get there, and but that will be the last thing for the stream, and then next time we'll go over like the caching. So the first thing we need to do now, we need to create like a unit test bundle. New file. Unit. We're just gonna go with whatever name they offer us. So I'm adding the unit test target. Once it's suggesting you Swift testing, but I haven't used it. So I'll switch back to XC test. And right off the bat, it creates this testing pretty much setup here. Of like different functions that we can use, but we're gonna pretty much clear this and just go off our back here. New target added. Yeah, this is just for our testing. We'll just change this to our view model testing to and what we're gonna have in here. But first thing we have to do is to be able to test anything from our actual project, we have to add a test. Import the project to, we can call pretty much any class or property or function from project inside our unit. All right, so the first thing is let's see if we can like a version of our view model. So say like let's add the setup functions. So these are like the functions. So we don't have class version. So this is a function that gets called the first time you run the unit test. Have a tear down function, and this is like a cleanup function. It's called like after like the last thing. So this is like where you can like clear up, like clean up any type of work that you might be. We're not gonna write a bunch of tests. We're just gonna a couple of them probably just do like a success state, or maybe do like error. First thing are, and we're gonna add our view model. And this could be this. I'm gonna force unwrap this because I know that we will have this. And I want to or services. So the other dependency that the to-do list view model has is services. But again, we don't want to use real services in this. So we are going to use our mock version of the protocol that we made for API services. So services. So this is why I use a protocol, because now I just have to make same way like how we have API services input here, and just have it conform to the. I can make a test version and then just have it conform to the API services. All right, so we jump back to our test project, and we're going to create a new. We're just going to call this mocks. Comment this out for now. Just get rid of the error. And we're going to add a new file here. So it's going to be API services mocks, or mock API services. Mock API services. So API services. I'm going to make a conf for API services class. Oh, we don't have access to it because we import testable. We have to import our project use testable. Or then now we make our mock class conform API services, and it will require us to add that function. All right. So now basically, so we're using a test version of our API, so no real API calls are going to be made. That's what we want. We don't want to use real API calls. The next thing we're going to do is set up a way how we can pass in data or error if it's error does occur. Not a real API call. This will be based on whatever we are trying to test for, whether it's a success case or an error case. The results. I'm gonna have this be a result, and then our success case is array of to-do items, and then our error case, which is a custom error, and a spin off. Okay. What we're going to do now is just switch on results. So we're switching on it. So based on whatever we pass our mock API services results from our testing class, successful items, like we do get that data, we able to pass that and like pretty much mimic the real actual services using our fake one. Some kind of confusing, but I'll start doing it. It might make more sense. So instead of naming this success, this is the ToDo items. And for failure, let's just say error. Have this return item, and we're gonna just have this throw error. I think. So instead of doing that, let's just API error. Say customer. No. Yes. I don't really worry about this, but this is just like a safety that Swift is adds to certain enum cases for additional case where something might not be set. Pardon me if I'm wrong with that one though. But yeah. So so the next thing we have to do now use actually this mock API services inside our unit test. So we'll jump back here, comment this. We'll switch to using mock API services. And we're just going to size is API services. Now we can actually create our view model like this view, and because we're just passing our services. And since this runs the first time, we know we'll have our services ready, we'll have our view model ready. And then so this gets called first, set up the thing that gets called last, just clear up everything is tear down. So we can basically get rid of this, copy this. We're gonna set each of these to nil whenever we tear down, just to clean up after. So all right, so the first case we're going to test is if the API call is successful. So it'll be like item success. And for names of functions, for test names of functions, it's okay if like names is really long. From what I've seen like some long names. Some people even use not camel case, but snake case when it comes to your testing, but they use camel case everywhere else. All right, so fetch items, you want to check what happens. So what I like to write this is like given, and then be like when, then. So we say services that result, and since we're testing a success case, we could do the success. So we're going to pass in an array of to-do items. So we know what we're trying. We're trying to test what happens when we have a successfully get data API. Using our mock service that is mimicking our real service. All right, so we need to. So this data, this success case requires that we have an array, or at least an array of to-do items. So let's just create some mock to-do. So let's just be like mock to item. One. And then we'll set this to false. Let's just copy this because we're just gonna make copy. Just paste now. Mock item. Replace this with ID. Let's replace that with 2. This is a studying. As I said, it's true. We're gonna add both of these to as a success case. It'll be like mock item 2. And now our services mock API class, which is a fake service that we're using to test, is kind of returning us these two to-do items. So we want to check what happens when call view model dot get our fetch to do items. We will need to update this. We need to update it since it's an asynchronous. We have to update here. Then I believe. Oh wait. So the API is going to return us this two of these items. So whenever we call fetch data, you can expect that basically everything that happened usually within the view model, but we're only gonna be getting these two data datas from the API. So we call this now no. So now for the things that we want to check. So we want to check that one thing that we could check too, we want to check that is loading is false right now. Like we're not calling the API and then like we're not calling it like we're not showing the progress view and then calling the API. We're calling the API like we called it. You know what I mean, so I want to make sure we don't see the progress view too early. So we could do something like assert false. Be like view model that is loading. Is loading should be false here, at least at this point. And what else should be false? Show alert should be here. Show error alert. So to run tests in here, sometimes you can just use a daemon. Sometimes there's a daemon, but at each function, but sometimes it takes like a couple minutes. So I'll run this one, run all our tests. At least just these two I want to check that are passing. So okay, and our tests succeed. All right, so these two are still false. That's what we expect. In a success case. So some other things that we can check then is that after we call this API, we should view model that to do items should not be empty. I'll at least have these items. Let's just do XCT. View model that is empty. That's false. And we can add like one up here too. All right, before search for true. And then if we run these tests again, we should still pass here. Okay, so test succeed. All right, so the next thing is now we can check like what are the actual elements that we're passing in, just to make sure that our test is getting the right data. So we could exceed insert equal, and then we could be like view model that to do items, and first one that its title is do another thing. So we're gonna do both of them. Let's just check both elements in array. And then let's just run our test again. Usually the diamond shows here. I don't know why it's sick, but our test still succeed. And just let's just make sure that we're not like seeing like buggy word issue. Let's just change cleaning to just this. But this one should definitely fail in this case because it's expecting it with G, and I removed the G. So let's run our test again. Pass just pass. So run the see we have inside our view model that item. Well, that is 0. I'm set a break. Oh, I see. I think it's running an async. It's completing before it can. Okay, one sec. All right, let's jump. And oh, we haven't add tests in this. That's our now. Save that. Okay, you see the diamond showed up as soon as I added the test. Now if we run this again, okay, we're hitting our breakpoints. And this one will now fail since it isn't equal, it doesn't have the G. Let's just remove this breakpoint and run it again. Get rid of this. Okay, so it fails there as expected. So the issue earlier was just that I didn't have the test name. I didn't start the name of our unit test testing function with test. And that's why the diamond didn't appear either. So all unit test functions should start with test. All right, so let's run. I added back our G, and let's run the entire function testing class again, and all our tests pass. All right, cool. So another thing that we can check too is we can check our error cases, but I think I'm gonna push the error cases video to a different stream because like we're taking up a lot of time on this one. But yeah, so the next thing is that, like, all right, so we can do unit testing. Check, this is just a success case, so I'll add like a comment here. If the function is pretty self-explanatory. Case successful. Fetch data from API. From API. Okay. And then we can also test the amount elements inside of. We can also retest loading. So is loading should be false now. Started that. And we can check that amount elements inside our array. Well, so item account should equal to run our unit test class again, and all our tests are successful. Let's run the actual entire project now. Nice. Grab this. And as you see, we can still do the same thing. Dislike. Complete, mark as completed. We can delete. We have a breakpoint here. Some of the cases that we could test is we jump to our view model. We jump to our to-do list view model. You see that there's a couple functions that we could test too. Tested the success, and but we still have to test updated to-do item and deleted to-do item. A good way to know like how much of your code is actually being tested is if coverage. Let's run a new coverage. So I'm just gonna do command to run like the complete test coverage. Right now, at 83%. I really don't feel like this is 83% of coverage. Okay, so yeah, so our view model is 47.4. We have a lot more places where we could add some more unit testing. We jump to the actual file. Like it kind of highlights them, like see this side here where it's in red. That means yeah, we're not testing that at all. Updated to the item. That means we're not testing that at all. Error case. That means we're not testing that at all. But in the success case here, you see that we don't see any red bars. So we just have to pretty much do the same, a similar method, just as for our error cases. Another step 2, yeah. Yeah, so that's where we're gonna leave the stream for today. Yeah, if you like this, just follow, sub, check it out. I'll push this to YouTube too. So but the next time we're gonna really be touching like each of these JSON placeholder APIs, building apps with them, writing unit tests, all that, and eventually adding in some caching. Another thing too that's really good too is if I feel like a lot of people don't really use it, but like you can create a way how to pretty much test your actual service class. So right now we're testing with just a view model, but you can actually test our service class. API services here. An idea how we would do this is like you would use a protocol called URL protocol, and basically that would be like a fake URL session. So how we would start kind of doing that is instead of using URL session here that shared, we'd pass this in like a dependency. So that's like the first step though. So let me just change it here. So I'll be like session URL session, and then we'll be like init. But I'm gonna add a default value, so I'll just be like that shared. And then instead of using URL session shared here, I'll just change that to session. But how this benefits though is that like when you use, say we make a class, we would be able to, whenever I'll just use that, we'd be able to pass in like a fake URL session, to how we passed in a fake services class for our view model. We can pass in a fake URL session. So in a way we can mimic like, what if the API sends how will our code handle if the API sends us bad formatted data, or something just unexpected from the API. I can like write unit tests to kind of handle for that, just to handle for those edge cases. We have to look at that in a different stream though. But again, yo, if you like this, just follow and sub.